U.S. legendary reporter Seymour Hersh is here with us today to talk about his bombshell report on who blew up Nord Stream. In his report, Seymour Hersh suggests it was carried out by the United States at the order of the President of the United States. Mr. Hersh, thank you for joining us. It seems you were not surprised at all to hear the news. What was your first reaction to the news?
I'm a journalist. I've been doing stuff like this for 50 years. Surprised at the stupidity of things my government does. You have to remember, I was the one who wrote stories about the My Lai massacre in Vietnam. I'm very used to the liabilities of my government. They can always do very stupid things. Probably just as often as they do very smart things. So, surprised, somebody had to have blown up the pipeline, and it never made sense to me. But it never made sense to me that it was the Russians, as everybody seemed to think in Washington. But I wasn't actually working on that. I've been doing doing a long project on something else, and I just happened to ask somebody, some person I know, about it, and in a minute, I was just told, well, of course we did it. Of course, America. Who else would have done it? Who else would stop a pipeline full of gas that had been sanctioned by our ally, the Germans? The German government had stopped it at our request because America has a long-standing history in the Cold War, going back to the John F. Kennedy administration in the early 1960s, of being very disturbed by the Russian gas and oil sales to the Western Europe. Russia has enormous surplus and supply of gas. It's almost inexhaustible, and their gas is cheap and very clean. And we've always been bothered by the fact that Russia, as we considered during the Cold War, it's still the Cold War, we've always considered it to be weaponized. Russia was weaponizing gas. And that's the theme of American foreign policy towards Russia, as opposed to all the other issues about communism, not communism, who supports who and where in Vietnam or later in the world. So that was always a chronic issue. So it wouldn't have surprised me one bit when I first heard it.
Why would the U.S. wanted to sabotage the pipelines that would be beneficial to its NATO allies, as the pipelines were crucial for Western Europe energy supply?
I think the people that were initially asked to do the job, they were asked in 2021, before Christmas, by the National Security Advisor for President Biden, Jake Sullivan. So the idea was, this is one of the options: blow up the pipeline. And the president himself, last February the 7th, 2022, publicly said, if they go in, we will blow up the pipelines. And a reporter said, do you know how? And he said, we know how. So there wasn't much of a secret what we wanted to do. Of course, unfortunately, those people in the Western press or the American press corps seem to have forgotten that phrase. It was all over television. But so anyway, the purpose of the people involved in the intelligence community doing this mission with the Norwegians, as I wrote, was to give the president an option, to say to President Putin, if you go to war, we're going to destroy the pipelines. And it's Russian gas that was in it. It was filled. So he then decided, the president, in late September, to trigger the mines. The war wasn't going great in Ukraine. The American war that President Biden was so eager to support wasn't not going well by late fall. At best, a stalemate. Two sides just staying there. And so at that point, the only thing I can think and suppose, and those who were involved had the same thought, the president was afraid that Chancellor Schultz not wanting to put more guns and more arms, that's all. I don't know whether it was an anger or punishment, but the net effect is that he's cut off a major power source to Western Europe. So Europe's in a crisis now. So down the road, this summer and fall, it's going to be very difficult for Biden. He's going to get a lot of criticism for what he did. That's for sure.